primary ignition.
This is Star Wars.
Look out!
Core World News.
You may fire when ready.
Good evening, fellows.
Oh, Grex, how are you? Good to see you, buddy.
Yes, improv.
Good. Just flying in from Polis Massa,
Oh, how's the weather on Polis Massa?
Well, I was inside a biodome, so
Right.
never
It's
really
always-
went outside. It's quite inhospitable.
Right, an asteroid and all. I imagine inside was pretty inhospitable too.
Mm-hmm.
Shall I begin?
Yes, please.
From the bright center of the galaxy, I'm Grex Kondak, noticing the Core World News, your holiday news service providing in-depth coverage of the latest stories from around the galaxy. Now, your news segment rundown for April 22nd, 2022. Kyber Crystal Comics Corner. But first, this news.
All right, welcome to Core World News, everyone. Thank you very much, Grex, Grant, and Adam here in the house with y'all.
Yeah.
in the floating asteroid hollow net station. We're going to cover the news today. It's been a minute since Core World News has covered actual news. I don't even know if it's news. It might be.
You may
rumors, but
wonder what this podcast is.
I know.
You think it'd be a news podcast, but you dabble into many
Yeah.
subjects. It's fantastic. But
And-
news was where we started.
Yeah. So
True,
actually, recently
very
we were. Well, I think Adam was not here last week, so welcome back, Adam. Well,
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to pick your brain on battles soon.
All right.
But let's hop into the news, us being a news resource. First bit of news is that there'll be 2 new characters were announced for Andor, the Andor series that's coming up. And there'll be one of them, not really that surprising. An Imperial Guard will be in there. So the red guys with the cone heads, which are kind of amazing. And Masa Maeda will be in the show, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
I think at one point we had guessed about the Emperor, that he is not at all confirmed at all. So it's interesting that maybe we'll get a character exploration of one of Palpatine's lessers here. What do you think about this rumor, but potentially cool idea?
I mean,
I think if we're going back to course on it all, or at least to see, I mean, if there's so many things I want to say, but if we're going to see those, if we're going to see Masa Maeda and a Royal Guard, we're probably going to see the Emperor. We know that we know that he's game to come back.
I'm guessing we're going to see Mon Mothma, right? And Mon Mothma confronting Masa Maeda, maybe.
Yeah.
And, the Senate. That could be fun. It's actually seeing the Senate in action, because we hear about it in A New Hope, and it's like let's actually go there during the time of Rogue One, or just before that in Andor's history.
Yeah, I'd love to see how it's quote unquote functioning, right? In live action under the Empire. It'd be really interesting.
Yeah, we actually get some of that like prequel energy, like politics, poli-sci in there. I want some of that. It'd be kind of cool. I mean, I was hoping for the Emperor, and that, Masa Maeda would be like sort of I assume like Sly Moore and Masa Maeda are always flanking him, the Emperor at this point. But we have been reading several comics that have all those characters in them, so maybe that's why my mind's there. But pretty cool. See live action Imperial troopers again, and I'd love to see them actually in action, fighting.
Yeah, I would too.
Rebel Secret Service,
yeah.
Andor just, I don't know, sabotaging these massive, Imperial shipyards, doing just this crazy kind of rebellious activity before Rogue One. Just stuff that makes him storied before he's in Rogue One.
Yeah, definitely. Taking on a squad of Imperial Guards would be pretty cool. Lords of the Sith is one of the early novels in the new canon, and it was wild. It read like an 8-year-old writing fan fiction sometimes. It was just and then lightsabers and lightning and monsters, and it was all action packed. Vader and Palpatine and the Imperial Guard, and I don't know, but it was all cool. And the Imperial Guards fighting is something we've never seen in live action, so I want to check that out.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, those characters. I mean, they captured my imagination when I was a kid, right? Like they were just something new and so cool looking. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, so we've also been talking a lot about Acolyte, and I grabbed a couple pieces of interesting information. One, there's been, it's good and bad. I'll just start there. So some of the good is that 2 new characters have been cast. A person named Miri and a person named Paul, and they are allegedly both going to be dark side like users. So they're casting more dark side users, and so Miri would be like a younger girl, and Paul would be an older guy, and that's what it is. Paul, I don't know about a proper Christian name in Star Wars, but here we are.
I mean, I know, having just rewatched the Dune from this year, every time, like
Poetry,
Right.
it's poetry. It's a Dune reference. Everything's all after reading those books and watching that movie is like, oh, everything's a Dune reference. Literally everything is a Dune reference.
And maybe it's a placeholder. They're like, this is essentially like what we're, the vibe we're going for, and we'll change later.
That might, if that happens, I might unseat Tobias Beckett for the least Star Wars name I've ever heard in Star Wars.
Well, Acolyte, just to me, that signifies this is going to be like a devout Sith character, or like someone who's just learning about the Sith ideology and maybe like, from the ground up. Yeah. And then I feel like in that way, they're going to be, we're going to get a lot of dark side users. It's going to be people having visions, much like Dune. It'll be a lot of prophecy.
Yeah.
I imagine.
I hope so. It's super exciting. That series just sounds so fascinating. What's the bad news?
Well, so the bad news is, that series we love and we're talking about, and that's exactly the series I want to get. It has been heavily pushed back. For it in favor of a new High Republic live action show.
Oh, well, okay.
Who's helming the High Republic live action show?
So that's what I've been trying to figure out.
Is that John Watts? Is that Spider-Man director John Watts?
They described it as a mysterious High Republic show. So obviously Andor and Ahsoka are coming out soon, and we're on the precipice of Kenobi. But yeah, so I think then they're talking about a High Republic show, and then we'll get Acolyte. So it's kind of at odds with the casting news, right? So maybe a dubious rumor. We'll see. There's no information, but about the High Republic show, but there apparently is one in the works that's in secret.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by this. I mean, just watching, how much the High Republic has taken off in the other media, right? Like, I think we've talked about the fact that there's really just a few books announced. Now there's a lot of books announced, a lot of comics announced, a lot of things just and that clearly shows because, first and foremost, Lucas is Disney and Star Wars is a brand, right? So clearly this has struck a chord in Star Wars fans, the High Republic. I know it has for me. So that's kind of when you announce that, I'm really excited for the Acolyte, but I'm like, I don't know. It's a bit of a Sophie's choice. I'm like, yeah, maybe I will wait another year or two if that means that gives us a High Republic show, because I like that era a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'd be amazing to see in a live action. I mean, it huge if true, right?
Yeah.
That would be great. I would love that show. I did hear about a Kevin Feige project as well. And I wonder.
Yeah, I've been hearing rumblings of that as well.
Because the High Republic could be a long and winding serialized sort of series of films, or streaming premium shows. So you get a lot out of the High Republic. So one movie might just be the beginning of a larger High Republic initiative.
Yeah, we'll see. It's like they kind of made this out of nothing, they picked an interesting era that didn't step on any old EU eras. I think a lot of people would like.
I think we got to go back.
Yeah,
before Ki-Adi-Mundi's, 1,000 years before the Sith. I think we have to go back before.
At some point, right?
At some point.
Yeah. I'm just part of me is just just do it all, right? just you have all those errors you can play around with. Go way back. Go way forward. Right? Like play around with all this stuff. I know they don't really want to touch right after episode 9, which I get. I'm not against that. Like, give that some breathing room. Let people kind of figure it out. Maybe come up with a plan this time. And then but there's so many other errors that you can talk about. I mean, the fact that it's going to sound like a weird sentence. They only went a few hundred years in the past, right, to do the High Republic. That still freed them up quite a bit for storytelling. So imagine like if you go a few thousand years in the past, right, they can do really whatever they want. Yeah, like it's a slightly conservative jump, another like, I think they're being very conservative with their choices. And I mean, High Republic, it's still a big swing. Like it's a total blank canvas, except for Yoda, right? And Yariel Poof, like those are the only characters that are holding over.
And Prince.
Yeah, but they can still sort of build on the canon. They can set, all the stuff they're doing with Sullust, and like it's the foundations of the, Skywalker saga that we know. So, pretty cool. I'm definitely stoked to see that show. They've put so much into this era. It's a really fascinating story, and there's a lot of dimensions. It still is barely begun, so we don't even know really what the High Republic is yet. It's interesting. Like I know they're talking, like you said, they're talking about doing a show, but like the novels have a pretty clear timeline built out, and as we know, Star Wars is precious with their canon, right? And so I don't know, are they going to go further back before what's taking place in the novels? That's why the Acolyte made sense to me, because that was supposed to be like butting right up against the age that we first meet them in the prequels. So there's room there. We know the novels aren't going up there, but it's just this weird thing where, what are they going to tell us that we haven't already read in the books? Or are they just going to do a retelling?
Going to be a canonization of the sort of birth of the Rule of Two. Not, I guess not the birth of it, but like the players that are actually following it, and we're just catching up with them. Do you think it'll be like the reveal of the duo that are the Sith at this point? Do you think it'll be that sort of reveal, and it'd be a giant sort of cross-media sort of exploration of film and premium shows and all this kind of stuff to show where like the Sith are at just before Palpatine enacts his plan? Yeah, I definitely. I'm hoping for that. And we won't know them. It'll just be a new pair. Maybe Darkseid. Maybe the Sith are a big feature at Star Wars Celebration. Maybe it's like, here we go. Here is the dark side. Now, Obi-Wan, the Hope. You're seeing all these idols of hope. These characters that represent the light side. But then maybe some montage video ends with Vader. It's Hayden's celebrated. Vader's back. It's dark side exploration, and then the Sith basically in the High Republic era, and more delving into the Sith in ways that don't involve Palpatine. So I've been collecting to kind of answer that question, Grant, that we started out with. Like, is this the recanonization of the Rule 2? Because it would be kind of recanonization. And the reason I'm using that is because I've been collecting the Essential Legends collections that they've been releasing, which they've been republishing. Yeah. And there are if you look at the things they've released prior, they've released the first 2 books of Rogue Squadron, which makes sense because there was a movie and still is technically on the slate, Rogue Squadron. They have released Kenobi. That makes sense. Right. They have re-released the Heir to the Empire trilogy, which makes sense because we're getting Thrawn now. And I really do think we're going to get a new version of the Heir to the Empire saga in the TVs. Right. They've also released the Darth Bane trilogy. Like, they've released the Rule of Two. They really want to, I think, tell that dark side story, and I think we might get that in some form. And I would love that. Those books are so good and show how you can center a story around the Sith that's compelling and makes you root for someone, even though they're like following the dark side. Right. Right. And I mean, I don't want to blow the end of that trilogy, but let's just say Darth Bane might still be around in some way, and like could be in this show at this time period. Because I'm pretty sure it's 500 years before the battle of Yavin, right? And so his that story took place 200 years before this. But like the way the Sith seem to stay alive, it'd be interesting if how far removed from Darth Bane
are they during the High Republic? I'm just, it would be like total blank slate for Sith.
Yeah.
And it would be fun to create some more baddies.
So I'm going to do this live and propose this live. We have talked about doing rereads. We've talked about doing character studies.
Yes.
We have a lot going on. I'm not saying this for next week, but let's pencil this in for the summer. We should just do a reread of that trilogy and do a Darth Bane deep dive and read those 3 books again.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
The Bane books.
Yeah.
Those are some good beach reads right there. Sit down and just crush some Bane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got some flights coming up. I could use something to do.
Okay, we'll put that on the slate. That would be fun to do. Another little smidgen of news. I didn't know this, but Natalie Holt is going to be the composer for Kenobi, and it's the first female composer in Star Wars, so that's a new thing. And she gave an interview the other day and was just saying general things like trying to do her own stuff. She said she used 250 horns on the score, including a hunting horn. Yeah.
Oh.
So, and she's a violinist, a classical violinist by trade. So it's going to be a really, as synthetic as Goranson was, even though he had some nice sort of tribal feel to him, this is, I think, going to be like pure classical.
She also did the music for Loki, right?
Yes, she did.
Which was
outstanding. Yeah. It's really good.
Score.
And very, very fantasy, like that fits that tone perfectly. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes so much. I mean, like, I love what Goranson was doing with The Mandalorian, and it makes sense for The Mandalorian. And this makes sense for Kenobi. Kenobi's a classical character, character. You use classical music with him. Yeah. Yeah.
And so she also let slide that John Williams composed the theme for Obi-Wan. He wrote
That's right. I heard that. Yeah. Yeah.
And they had the quote. It was, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. He's like, I'd like to work on Benny's theme if I could, meaning Ben Kenobi.
Love
would you do that?
That's amazing.
I love how they're activating him now. They don't use him for full movies. I don't think we're ever going to get another full movie John Williams score, but saying that he's one of the best composers of all time is just an understatement. But just in terms of Star Wars, he just understands Star Wars. And I still remember when you walk into Galaxy's Edge, they have his theme playing on a loop.
Yeah,
that he wrote when you're going through the tunnel. Yeah, and I got chills the second time I walked through. Hearing that is basically it's the way to instantaneously transport you to the Star Wars universe. And that's a new theme. I'd never heard it before, but you just know it's Star Wars and you can feel it. And so just hearing that theme play every time for the 6 weeks that we have Kenobi is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I guess John Williams was saying that he felt like Ben Kenobi was the only character he hadn't written a theme for properly, because he was he didn't last long in A New Hope. So
right.
I'm fascinated to see it because, we got a new Han Solo theme. I love all this theme. I mean, again, it's and other news, grass is green and the sky is blue. And John Williams is awesome at writing scores.
Right.
Cool.
That's cool. And also, so I guess Natalie used sort of his theme as a basis of what she did the rest of the theme to sound like. And that's why I think one of the reasons she leaned heavily on classical, but we'll see how it goes. Because, John Williams he'll bring in a random element, right, to change the whole mood of the piece.
I'm wondering how close it will be to sort of Luke's motif, that theme, because I wonder how close Obi-Wan is to the center of the story. I feel like he's integral to the original trilogy, to the point. And I think when Luke is, in the X-Wing and Obi-Wan's talking to him at the end, I think there is music there that I think might be incorporated into the Obi-Wan.
That'd be really interesting if he kind of went back and borrowed from himself, right?
Well, he'll take a musical, he'll borrow from a musical theme to help tell the story. He does that all the time. I'm thinking Duel of Fates. It'll borrow a little more from Duel of Fates. I did leave out the line where Natalie said there will be voice, like human voice in the thing as well. So
fantastic.
That's kind of that might be spoiling it for me, but it could be a play off of Duel of Fates. I don't know.
Makes
like
a ton of
so
sense.
amped for this, guys.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, and his character themes are just amazing. Like, I know some of the people were somewhat lukewarm on the sequel trilogy, but like, I'll get Rey's theme just stuck in my head, and now I just said it. It'll literally be in my head for a week now. Like, I was really
Rey's theme.
Yeah, and I'm not a guy who gets classical themes stuck in his head, but like just that and Kylo's and just the use of Kylo's, like using it in major chords at the end of episode 9 is just amazing, and just yeah.
So cool.
Very cool. All right, one more piece of news. This is why I think I wanted to do a new segment in the first place, rather. Amy Hennig.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. She has a new Star Wars game, and it's reportedly. So Amy Hennig ran what is Uncharted.
Well, she was at Naughty Dog making Uncharted.
Yeah.
Basically, I think they made the first one. And I think she had a Star Wars game planned with Visceral Games before they shut down, and it was that was Project Ragtag, and that was about this lone survivor of Alderaan, sort of like Indiana Jones type, with like a whip and like a pretty cool ensemble, and I guess traversing the galaxy. I don't know if if those are the correct details, but that's just what I've heard in rumors. That's
what I heard as well, is that it's a revival of that Project Ragtag game.
Wow.
Which is great. That means they're listening. It's like, it doesn't matter that it's not the greatest Star Wars game of all time. Like, people want single player games. Like, let's get that going. I'm sure it was a fantastic game that they made.
Yeah, I mean, I devoured those first 3 Uncharted games when they came out. Like, I remember I was living in DC, and I think the second one came out right around Christmas, and I drove up to my parents' house. I was like working on my dissertation, and I drove up to my parents' house, and I was sleeping on the couch because they're living in an apartment at the time. And I literally packed my PlayStation 3, I think, like with me, like rented a car, like had like a stack of games. I think it was like that, maybe The Last of Us. I just can't remember. And I just sat there, and like I was like a 30-year-old teenager, where I just sat there in the living room, like drinking Coke and like playing that game. Oh, it's like stay up all night, and my parents would come out and be in my boxers, like playing video games. It was the best and most shameful moment of my life. But it's just like, those games were addictive, like, because they are super fun to play. They're very polished, and the storytelling's great, right? Like I would almost, that's one of those first games that I would play a lot to get to the cutscenes, right? Like, or I just wanted the story to unfold,
right?
Kind of the opposite of how I play an Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, can I just fight some people now?
Yeah, I will skip past the story.
But I guess this, the new game that she's been hired to create is with Skydance New Media. That's that JJ's studio behind it. I think it's studio. I think Hennig is co-owner of the studio. I think there's
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's Skydance Media.
Founded by David Ellison. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
nice.
And Skydance made the announcement. I guess so. I think, did Skydance do 1313?
No, that was
someone else. Okay. No. I'm reading this wrong. It's fine.
That's what I was thinking. So I was looking at Skydance in terms of their movie production arm.
Right.
They do a lot with Tom Cruise.
Okay. Oh, right.
Yeah, they do all the Mission Impossibles, the Jack Reachers, the Top Gun Maverick.
So, anyways, it's an official announcement. This is not a rumor. This is not a drill. There will be another game.
That's awesome.
So, that's pretty exciting.
I also want to say, I know we're trying to move on, but I just want to say I'm very excited to have a Star Wars game possibly centered around a non-Force user.
Yeah.
Because favorite cool game like Bounty Hunter and Republic Commando, or like some of the don't get me wrong, like Jedi Fallen Order is amazing, and I love wielding a lightsaber, but like give me a blaster sometimes, right? Like just yeah.
You know what's weird is the main characters was supposed to be this sort of very Nathan Drake-esque swashbuckler character, but I mean, if you reskinned it to be Afra, it'd be a really cool game. But I'm sure there has to be some sort of heart to this story because it is like Afra's an Alderaanian and it takes place in the original trilogy. But I'd be ready for an Afra game. It would be so fun.
Give me an Uncharted Afra game any day of the week. Give me anything. And Afra in any. Yeah.
Afra is like a logical progression on from Nathan Drake, right? It's like a character with more dimensions to them, like, but still snark and humor, and that would be fun.
If we get through 2022 without either seeing Afra or having an announcement of Afra in some other media other than books and comics, I'm going to start writing strongly worded letters to people.
Dear sirs and madams.
Yes.
There are so many characters I'd like to be the, lead in a video game. I mean,
like
a game, like
yes,
a Mando and Grogu game.
A Mando, a
AAA Mando and Grogu game.
What if you did a Mando game that was just like, what was it, Yoshi's Island 2, where every time you would lose Baby Mario, it would start crying and you'd have to go back and catch him. So every time you lose Baby Grogu, you have to go running back. It has the most annoying sound in the world.
Get a dozen eggs now and again.
Just me.
That would be exciting. That'd be great.
Grogu will just try to eat everything around you. And
you just stop him from eating everything.
Yeah, just like love it.
That is amazing. Adam, while we got you here, and before we move on, we talked a lot about battles last week, but we didn't have your insight. We gave our top 3 battles in the stars, wars in the stars, if you will. How close were we on guesses for you?
I mean, you were spot on. It's very funny because behind the scenes, we were texting a little bit. I just wasn't able to make it. And, Ben said, if you have time, feel free to text your choices. And I didn't have time. And so when I listened back and Ben and Grant were so sure they had my right answers, and they were so sure that they both were thinking of the same thing. And then it turned out they were thinking of 2 separate things, and yet they're both 100% right. They nailed 2 out of my 3 choices. And I was forming them before listening and during listening. And so Grant had mentioned, I think it was Grant had mentioned the opening of episode 3, which is like
that was me.
So I got flipped. So that was Ben. And my favorite thing, I was talking to Carly, my wife, about that, where I'm just like, every time I rewatch episode 3, and it's going to come across a little snarky, I'm just like, oh my God, I think this movie's the best movie ever. I love this movie. And it gets like 15 minutes and I'm like, oh, that's right. This movie's fine. Like, I love it because it's Star Wars. But I'm like, oh, it's my least favorite Star Wars movie.
That was my number 1. That was my number 1.
It's up there for that opening is amazing.
Like,
it tricks me into thinking that Revenge of the Sith is my favorite Star Wars movie for about 15 minutes, which is amazing. And then the other one that was mentioned was the Yuzan Vong War. It's hard to say a battle because there's so many of them. Right. I mean, by the way, I'm a book and a half away of finishing that series.
Oh my gosh, I feel like you've been working on this for 3 years.
It's been at least 2 years. I mean, it's like 17 books long, and I read it at night, so I read about like 5% of a book every night.
Right.
But I am enjoying it quite a bit, more than I would expect. I think lowered expectations. I would have said Hoth, but that felt like cheating. So that would have been cheating. I would have forced something out of you. So my number 3, which I thought of, was the Battle of Kur, which I actually had to look up what it was titled, and that's from the end of the first book of the High Republic era. And I love it. I love the way that's written in that book. I love the fact that we get to see the Jedi's
crossbeams, or no, wait,
that's what I was trying to figure. Long beams,
the vectors and the long
vectors in action, and we get that amazing like micro jumps, like that chaos of the Nihil A. I just love that they're like just releasing gas into the area and just like gassing, and then they're doing like the micro jumps, and then we get Skur losing his arm. Like we get the chaos, and I just loved seeing that. I think part of it was seeing it in multiple formats, like seeing it in comics, reading it in multiple books. Like it's one of the battles outside of live action or animated that I could completely visualize, right? And so I really enjoyed that was my number 3.
Yeah, Jedis and Vectors turns out amazing.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of the long beam design too. I mean, the concept art's great. I can't wait until that concept art book comes out.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, why don't we move along on to Darth Vader?
Sure.
Kyber Crystal Comics Corner.
All right, we're back again with another Kyber Crystal Comics Corner. Yay. We're gonna we got Vader to talk about this week. We got the next run, issues 18 through 22, which is actually the first half of the Crimson Dawn, I think 10-part series, but they're breaking it up in half. What's that?
Who's keeping track, really?
Who's keeping track? But we're gonna talk about it.
The Crimson Wave.
Yeah, we sure are. And we already covered a little bit of this when we talked about bounty hunters, but I think what we'll talk a bit about is contrasting how bounty hunters versus Vader are incorporating the Crimson Reign into their arcs. But before we do that, let's give credit where credit's due. So this run is brought to you by Pack, Kirk, Villanova, Inyenko, Sinclair, Caramanga, Cutter, Izanov, Stengam, and Renaud.
Lovely work. Beautiful comic. I'm always looking forward to Vader. It's it's got a whole different patois to it than all the other comics. It's very black and red. Yeah.
And the first issue of this arc starts out with red flashbacks, right to Cloud City.
Yeah. The flashback work, like the parallel storytelling, is I think what Greg Pak's strong suit. Like it's just the best part of this comic, especially when you go through Vader's motivation from beginning to end of these issues from 18 to 22. You definitely feel like he's trying to establish order because he feels like
finish
politics.
I dare you to finish
politics, bureaucracy. It's not working. Like imperial bureaucracy is not working. There's moles, there's infiltrators inside everywhere, and this is something this political journey started in Attack of the Clones, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah. Like this whole series is predicated on one of the most infamous scenes in Star Wars prequel history, right? Yeah. Which is Anakin and Padme on the fields of Naboo having a conversation,
in the hay, if you will,
tumbling in the hay and having a conversation about politics, which, I will always, I will always stand for episode 2. It is my favorite prequel. It is right in the middle of my Star Wars best ofs. And yes, the romance stuff is clunky. I actually really like that conversation. I've always appreciated that conversation between Anakin and Padme. I think it is, I love his delivery, which is not something you'll hear a lot about Hayden Christensen in the prequels. I think he shows how innocent he is, right? And how little he understands because he's been raised in this weird cult. And I just think it's great. And I love the fact that oh, well, no, that's a whole nother thing.
That's the next scene, Grant. That's a different. That's a different patois. That's a very Vader patois.
That one I cannot stand for.
I recently watched this film and I adore it. I think Attack of the Clones is quickly. I was literally live tweeting, texting you guys. I was like, the chase through Coruscant is the best set piece moment in all of Star Wars. Period. Like there's none to compare.
I was out with my wife when you were texting. We were actually running errands, and I turned to her and I'm like, "It's working. I have." I was like,
"What language?" I never realized that Jango speaks some secret language to Boba, and I was like, "What is that? Like Mandalorian?" No, it's Fett code. I was like,
Fett code.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Into this, it's just that's such a good movie.
It is very good. I think it's also kind of funny that scene.
The not here stuff. It's a little over the top. But that's about it.
Yeah, but it's like it's like old Ray Harryhausen, like Clash of the Titans. Like I will argue for that. Yeah,
I know you almost want to see the Jedi like running through the desert more than just trapped in the arena. Like,
Agreed.
I feel like you only need 8 like Jedi to like go into that arena. I
Yeah,
don't think
you kind of get that after like post arena. They're out on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
just a little bit more of that could have been interesting.
yeah.
Sure.
Yes, but yeah. So back to that scene in the field. It's just funny. Have you seen the memes on the interwebs lately? And it's like it like over and over again.
Okay.
It's just,
Is it like the smile? Is it the smile with a straight face?
yeah, the Padme. Yeah, the smile, the straight face Padme. She's like, yeah,
It's so good.
yeah,
Yeah,
for a
it's about-
democracy, right? Right. Yeah. And it was like the frames were so close. I was like, are they gonna like actually pull this like a meme? And it's comic. My head would have broken. They flirt with it, but they don't do it. They do other sort of fun quotes later. But yeah, I love that talk, and you know, because they're talking about the nature of like government and like what's corrupt, and you know, like how do you deal with corruption, right? Or like how do you build consensus and create progress that benefits everybody? And she's like, you know, democracy, this is what we do. And he's like, no, it's not good enough, which I'm sure we've all said to ourselves at some point in our life.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone should be made to think a certain way, you know, one way to get things done.
All right. I'm like 2.5 beers deep. So I'm gonna get like
slow down there.
I know I'm gonna get wild here for a second, but like it is someone who is literally raised in government having a conversation with someone who is raised in a cloistered religion.
Yeah.
About how the world should be run.
Right.
Like I don't think we give that scene enough credit. Like that's kind of amazing when you think about it, and very connected to a lot of what's going on currently.
Right. And like they're like they're the poles, you know, across which the gamut of politics run in Star Wars, you know.
Yeah.
And really in current times too, right? Sort of authoritarianism versus democracy. And,
right.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we've mentioned this before. Lucas believed in a benevolent dictator, and, you know, there haven't been many of those. But that's what essentially Anakin was hinting at. But of course, it's fraught with peril, and we see the peril.
Yeah.
And what's cool about this comic is that scene directly foreshadows his actions in this comic. It's he's like, I'm going to drain the swamp, the Imperial bureaucracy. but he's used. Like, what's so cool about these comics is that everyone's pulling a fast one. Like Ochi is playing all sides. We get the return of an awesome character that we got back in the Dark Heart of the Sith arc. What's the Amidalans? We got Sabe back in.
Yeah.
By the way, her drip, like her swag in like the issues after this looks awesome. It's like black vest, like Vader-esque colors mixed with sort of Leia like attire. It's really cool. Like
we see her in the one of the Crimson Dawn outposts, and she narrowly escapes Vader, but incognito. She's wearing like this cool helmet and cape and like, you know, the suit. It's a good look. I
feel like this is the makings of a Vader show. If they ever want to do one on Disney Plus, it's like this return of Sabe, sort of someone who resembles Padme, like someone who's triggering like all his emotions. I feel like that's a fun way to do a series with Vader. If you wanted to really make him look vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, y'all should read this, but I'm about to spoil the end right now.
Yeah.
At the end of this, finally. So I mean, yes, everyone's playing each other. They're bouncing back and forth with allegiances. Vader is the most powerful piece on the board, and he's being played, but then they find out that he's playing the players and like, you know, all this. But Sabe, through this arc, puts the pieces together and makes a guess and says, "You're Anakin Skywalker."
Well, yeah,
it felt like
felt
like a Bruce Wayne moment to me.
Right. I was about to say, can we spoil the Batman for people? Yeah. Because I had the same reading of that where I'm are we gonna get like this slow clap? Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne. Which means
why should I be scared of? Anakin Skywalker. Anakin Skywalker. Only one we didn't get.
Right.
No, but
yeah.
not to spoil that, but obviously the setup here is that Vader's sworn to take out all of Crimson Dawn because they made him look like a fool during the War of the Bounty Hunters with after the
that's also
ball,
his task.
the dinner party, and then the Hutts, the Hutt cartel attacking, all this kind of stuff. He was like going to take out all of Crimson Dawn. Sabe plants a note, not a note, but a database of all these people who are said to be Crimson Dawn infiltrators in the Empire.
Yeah.
And
knowing that Vader will take them all out.
It's other lords and regional governors too, right? It's like just it's not just the Empire. And then Vader just goes out and just goes on this massacre onslaught, taking out all these people who are said to be part of this on this list. This database.
And what we find out is half the list is accurate. I think that's the thing that like let's not like forget about that. Like Sabe's a boss and cold-blooded.
Cold-blooded, yeah.
And I love her in this series. Like she clearly is not in Crimson Dawn's pocket. She's got her own agenda, right? And she's like, what does she have that line where she talks about sometimes every organization needs a culling. I can't remember how she refers to it as, of just like, you just need to get rid of some people in your organization.
I thought she does when she does have to reprogram the droid at some point, and she says, like, oh, I'm a rebel informant. I have to reprogram you. You know, I have to remove your Imperial diagnostics or something, because she's part of the rebellion, or because she has worked with the rebellion or something.
Right.
And I was like, okay, so she's part of the rebellion. Like that's where I just took it as she's part of the rebellion, but I guess she's not. She's definitely plays all sides as well. Like she doesn't even trust Crimson Dawn.
Right. I think she has
the side of the Amidalans.
Exactly. She has one mission in life, and that's to avenge Amidala, I think, right? Avenge Padme. Or revenge.
Or so cool that she goes to Polis Massa and finds like the broken, abandoned sort of like birthing chamber.
Yeah, you've seen that place a lot lately. That's where she.
Wow, true. That was cool. That was a cool scene.
That's when she finds out that Padme had a son, and B, the father was Anakin Skywalker.
But we also get one pivotal line. We get, "They're still good at him."
Yes,
that crushed me actually when I saw that. That was a great moment.
Those are her last words, right?
Yeah.
That was Padme's last words. So pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah. And I will always think back to my original viewing, episode 3. That rocked me in the theater. Like it hit me. I mean, as much as you kind of go back and you recontextualize and you reanalyze the movie and you think about what worked and what didn't. In that original viewing of episode 3, I got super choked up when I heard that line, right? Just connecting it to episode 6.
That's why I have a tough time watching Revenge of the Sith, because it's like the last act is just gut punch after gut punch after gut punch, and you're like, oh, okay.
I mean, the fall of Anakin Skywalker.
All right, so we've been hovering around this enough. Let's talk about my new favorite character, G90.
Yeah.
Oh, the ball? Is that the big ball?
The ball droid. That Vader straight up rides.
Oh yeah, runs on.
Like a bear in the circus. He just runs.
I was confused with that. That part I think is static, where I think there's like oscillating wheels around it.
Yeah.
I think
so he can stand.
I was like, is Vader actually dancing on a ball right now?
First time I read it, and that's why I wish. The second time I stared at that. I stared at that for like 10 minutes. I'm like, oh yeah, no, there's just exactly. There's a center that the center for some reason doesn't spin.
Right.
The sides do, which I guess works. But
I tried to work that out, and then I was like, no.
Anyway, anyone who hasn't read this comic, please just Wikipedia G90. GEE-90 NINTY. Google it. You will not regret it.
Yeah,
super effective.
Spherical droid the size of a PT Cruiser, and
who wields dual blasters at one point. I don't know what's holding the dual blasters.
Oh yeah, it can just cough out thermal detonators like whenever. And overall, good guy. I don't know what.
I like that whole crew. Like, I like the Revenger fighters. I like that whole crew. I like.
All right. Let me
Can we
just
talk
break
about the
this.
nomenclature?
Revengers.
Yeah. Now, like, does anyone remember the original way that Thor Ragnarok was? Okay, I'm not the only one, right? That's the way that movie was marketed before because they did not know how to market that movie.
Right.
And the movie was like, look, we're the Revengers, right? And that's how it's like an Avengers movie, but in space with Thor and the Hulk and Valkyrie, right? And it was like, we're the Revengers and Loki. But it's just like, it's so weird to see that, because every time I read that, I'm like, yeah, that's a Marvel thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty obvious wink and nod.
We're not the Revengers. We're the Avengers.
Yeah. It's also weird because Valance is in this, and I guess we should talk about that at some point. Yeah. Valance actually says
Valance unrecognizable in this series.
Hold on. Before we get into Valance deep, I want to mention that he at some point refers to one of them as, so you're a Revenger, which means that in the Star Wars universe, a Revenger is a proper noun that is used by people. Like, people refer to other people in the Star Wars universe as a Revenger.
I don't know, because it was kind of the joke. It was kind of a running joke, and I think he's just trying to grind it in there.
Just picked it up. Okay.
Can I just lay the land here? Like, so for people who haven't read this, there's this cadre that forms of 3 Revengers, and then
I don't want to hear we're talking smack about Ankla or Tonka.
Siri.
All right.
I'm not talking about.
I like these.
I'm not talking smack about the members of the Revengers. I'm talking about I'm talking smack about the nomenclature.
Yes. No. Yeah. Absolutely. It's interesting. So we have 3 assassins, master assassins from the Master Assassins Guild. That our beloved G90 is one of them, and then 3 Revengers. And they're all being directed by Ochi and Vader, and Valance is along for the ride because he has to be. Because Vader just like
Valance at the beginning of this comic is like, why am I here?
Yeah,
it's a good question.
It was a good question. And he didn't really do much. He just sort of was like, he's gonna kill all of you. Like, he's gonna kill you all. Yeah, you're all dead. Like, for a while, there's like a lot of hero worship of Vader. Like, that's how this arc starts out. This cadre follows him because he's killing Crimson Dawn, and that aligns the motives of a bunch of people. Certainly, the Revengers want revenge against Crimson Dawn. But then the alliances start ping-ponging for everybody, and it gets a little murky. But it's an interesting crew. It's like good and bad are working together, and like, they make fun of them. They're like, the heroes. Oh yeah, you go work with the heroes.
Yeah,
and it was like used as a pejorative.
I have a theory, guys. Everyone at some point has worked for Crimson Dawn.
Yeah,
it feels like that.
Or is do it or not. Crimson Dawn as a tool of some kind.
I will say
everyone has a touch point with Crimson Dawn.
One more comment about the Revengers, and then I want to talk about Crimson Dawn for a second. Is that the Revengers are in Wikipedia? They have their own entry, and it is a capital R, so it is a proper noun.
Okay. I want to see like West Side Story of Star Wars, but it's other
no, correct. It is for this group, which makes me feel a little better. Like, there's no other thing like that is a common term. I will say, and we can talk a bit about how Crimson Dawn is used in this series versus how we saw them in Bounty Hunters, and we will talk about the Crimson Dawn series in a while once it wraps up. It feels like they're only releasing issues every 2 months, and that's why there's going to be 5 issues proper of Crimson Dawn, while there's 10 issues of each comic within.
There's probably more Kylo Ren coming, by the way. So just
there's another Kylo Ren. Wow,
in a comic form or just?
I believe comic form.
Nice. All right, I'll take more Kylo. But I want to say, I was reading Vader, and what it made me realize is this actually does a good job of explaining why between episodes 5 and 6, the rebellion was able to rebuild, right? Because clearly what was happening between 5 and 6 is that the Empire was fighting a war on 2 fronts, right? They were more focused on the Crimson and Prime Syndicates, and that gave the space to the rebellion to rebuild.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But they're there because it's like, oh, they're suddenly the Empire's dealing with all these infiltrators, and even the Emperor knows allegedly who is in his midst.
Right.
I was thinking Crimson Dawn is like used by the Emperor secretly.
Maybe.
He thinks they are.
Like,
sure. He thinks he's pulling the strings. We'll see.
Wheels
if he
within wheels.
Palpatine wouldn't let this last. I mean, come on. Like,
he's trying to find an angle on it. You know, like he's like, how can I use this to my advantage? But
you know my theory of Palpatine.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is within his plan because retroactively he says, yes, according to my plan.
Right. And if it doesn't work out, he's like, exactly as I expected it would. Or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so anyways, we find out that Sabe has planted that database, but it's like enemies of the Amidalans. It's not like Crimson Dawn members.
Yeah, it's like
half Crimson Dawn.
And some of them are, but you can be an enemy of the Amidalans and a Crimson Dawn person. She doesn't care about Crimson Dawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then we do find out that she does have some ties to Crimson Dawn because she's wearing that pin.
Yeah. No, she's infiltrated Crimson Dawn.
Right.
But that's all in the purpose of hunting Vader.
That's right. She's like,
she's actually
joined just to. So Vader, I heard Vader was hunting Crimson Dawn, so I thought I'd join them as the fastest way to find him.
She's a perfect opposite number for Vader because actually their thinking and their motives are very much aligned. There's this really long series where Vader teaches his cadre about what happens when you take down one dictator, like what happens, like all these other factions spring up around it, and by using that mega super swamp monster that he killed like 10 issues previous. But then when we see Sabe doing the same thing, she's like instantly like, I'm going to use this Crimson Dawn and my my infiltration of the Empire to have both of my enemies kill each other. And like that was like both motives, both Vader and Sabe were doing the same thing at the same time at cross purposes. But it's a pretty cool team up there. I hope we see them together more. And plus, I'm looking behind Grant right now, and he's got an image. I think that's the cover of the next issue.
That's 23. The next issue, I think.
I mean,
20.
Yeah, like Sabe's dripping with swag.
Yeah,
like Vader.
So
swag.
That's the thing. Like I'm going to ask a question that I don't necessarily want us to get into physical capabilities and how this would be accomplished. But is there like are they gonna put a romance twist on this? Are we gonna get like romantic Vader?
Well, we know what happened the last romantic Vader. It was
stunned into silence.
Yeah.
I think that's where it needs to go, honestly.
Yeah.
So
let's
like
go.
I think
kind of weirdly want it
because like, don't you want to see like Batman and Catwoman, but it's Darth Vader and Sabe? Like, it's just don't you want to see that sort of art, basically?
Yeah, and I'm not going to ask any like really obvious questions, but I do kind of want like at least like it doesn't have to be requited, or whatever.
I don't know.
There's
a curious trap door on Vader's cod piece that may or may not be for physical usage.
Yeah. I mean, is it just going to be? I'm like, I don't want to do this, and now we're doing it.
And now
is it just going to be like? It's just going to be like?
It's like a trap door. He has a spring-loaded trap door.
Yeah. He's got a back to tank that's big enough for two.
Yeah. Oh, back to tank for two. Oh goodness! Thank you for saying that.
That egg is pretty big.
Yeah. It looks comfy too.
Yeah, I'm not going to contribute to this.
I know Grant is conspicuously silent.
I refuse.
Moving on.
These are the real questions.
We're going to keep our E rating.
At the end, and even Vader at the end is just like, I am the Dawn. And I was like, okay. And then OG what is OG doing? Is OG secretly Crimson Dawn this entire time?
Let's just let's put it on Front Street. How far are we into this conversation? And we have not. This is the first time we've mentioned OG of Bastoon.
Yeah. he is a spineless, sniveling dweeb throughout this whole arc.
Which is fine, right? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
That's a character. That's a character choice.
Yep.
I don't hate that.
Yeah.
I just feel like they do this. Pack or whoever does kind of the same thing with him like 3 or 4 times throughout this, which is where he's playing sides against each other. And I kind of like the fact that we get like upper level chess players like Vader and the Emperor doing it right, and then we get Ochi kind of fumbling. But there's like literally I think 3 times where Vader calls him Ochi on what he's doing, allows Ochi to live, and Ochi's just like, yeah, that's what I was playing in. Yeah. That's exactly what I was doing.
Exactly it. Yeah, like 3 or 4 times, and if like Vader is not fooled. Yeah, I love how they keep. I mean, positive thing to say here about Ochi. He's consistent, and they wrote in like his motivation is that he aligns himself with the most powerful entity present at that time.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing I'll say Vader,
but yeah.
Exactly. And the other thing is like Pac, to his credit, clearly knows what that character is, right? Yeah. Like that character has been pretty clearly developed. I just don't know if we need the same thing happening over and over and over again. And
it's hard to read that character because I'm trying to like find that voice, but it's like he always calls Lord Vader Lord Vader. He's like, Lord Vader, like of course he won. Like no one can stand up to Lord Vader. And it just says sort of he's almost like he's almost advertising, lionizing Lord Vader to everyone.
Yeah, he's like hype man, but then he's looking for. I mean, much like Afra was too. Is like, all right, I'll be on your side and leverage this as best I can. But you're always looking for an exit.
Yeah, he's like a dumb Afra.
Yeah, he is.
So actually, and this is gonna now open the door to us having to talk about episode 9. Not have to, but open the door to talking about episode 9. So let's. I need a refresher on. We can focus it on Ochi. So it is implied that Luke and Lando at some point after episode 6 go on a search, right?
Yes.
And don't encounter Ochi because Ochi's already dead, right? Like they find his ship, I think is what they say. So Ochi's already. So we don't actually know when Ochi, quote unquote, bites the dust, right? But we do know.
We know where.
But wait, he has the dagger, which via Goonies rules shows where the where Palpatine's like room of spoils on the Death Star is. Right, so it'd have to be after episode 6.
I would assume,
Ochi dies, right?
Probably. I mean, not necessarily though, because he could have that. I would assume by now everything in Exegol is like starting to. Oh no, yeah, it has to be after.
No, because it literally shows like the broken chunks of the Death Star on the moon of. On the other moon of Endor.
That's the story I want to see. Is what happened to Ochi when he died on Pasana? Like why? Yeah. Why? How did he die?
I mean, I think we'll eventually get there, but that's part of what I think Pac is. It was the snake. I think the Pac is like. It has kind of is he hasn't written himself into a corner. He's been written into a corner because you can't kill Ochi because we know Ochi's demise is after episode 6. So he just
maybe literally it's just a scene. All symbolism though. Maybe because it's like a snake kills him. He's a snakish character who basically plays all sides.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I guess Pac is doing what he can.
Yeah.
With that character, but can't kill him. So we have these miraculous escapes. Like there's a scene we were talking about off air where the droid mentioned the information droid that Padme repairs mentioned
like
or not Padme like Sabe mentions that you've escaped Vader 4 times, right? And I think Ochi now has escaped Vader's like not been killed by Vader like 10 times. Like it's at this point of like Vader. I'm almost now judging Vader more than I'm judging Ochi. Like, come on. Kill this.
Yeah, Vader. Vader is perplexing in these comics because he's just like torturing these people and trying to show them what it means to bring order to the galaxy, and he uses those creatures in that one stunt where he lets I guess Sabe and Ochi get attacked by these creatures, and more sandworms come out of somewhere and uses them all and shows it as a sort of like example of using all the monsters, using Crimson Dawn, using all the factions in this chaos, this soup of chaos that is the galaxy, and having those factions just go at each other and root out the basically the infiltrators or the moles or the people who are secreting into different organizations. So.
Yeah. To me, it looks like Vader's lost his mind. Like he really went through the ringer in that last arc, then got smacked down again, and he's just like trying to find a purpose to like pour himself into, other than just pure subjugation to the Emperor. And I mean, like I feel like he's coming apart a little bit.
I did love going into the Imperial Palace. And just Vader just chopping down guards and chopping down like delegates. Like that was that was nuts.
And the Emperor just watching, just being like,
the Emperor just being like,
"This is pretty cool."
Half of it with Crimson Dawn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I am enjoying like the Vader. Anytime there's Vader Emperor interaction in this comic, it's great. Like it just, I love their. I mean, I don't love their relationship. That sounds really weird, but I enjoy. Yeah, I'm appreciating how it's written. Like it's just every time any interaction, I'm like, yeah, it totally explains who those two dudes are. Like the rule of two works. Like yeah. I was rereading the earlier like 2017 run of Vader, and there's that great line where it's like Vader's just killing everybody, and Palpatine's like, I do want to rule over people. I don't want to rule over nothing. So you can't kill them all. But like still he's like, I kind of want to kill them all. And and I mean that's who Vader should be, right? Like he's just like, mirthless killer. I think the biggest issue is I still don't, and maybe it's not like necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know who Vader would be if Vader was the master. Right? Like he is still so Anakin. He's still so that kid impulsive, sitting in the field with Padme that I just don't know. Like I just feel like if he had taken over, it just like it would have fallen immediately. Like I feel like this is not a slight against Vader. I think Vader's a better apprentice than master. I feel like if Vader was a master, his apprentice would have killed him in like, I don't know, a week and a half.
Maybe. I mean, he's pretty strong. I think actually
he's
Vader
strong, but not a strategist.
Right. He would have just ruled with an iron fist.
I need the best moisturizers.
Yeah.
Back to fluid.
He would have just been like a classic authoritarian. I think would just be like, if you go against me, you die at the end. And I mean, I don't know
like if you walk into his throne room, you're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But it's and don't, do exactly what he says, and like we would just rule with fear. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I saw some art this week too of a light side Palpatine, which no one ever talks about, like a twisted world where he comes up through Palpatine comes up through the ranks, and like the question was like, who would his master be? Which is an interesting question. We don't have a list of masters. You'd have to dip back like Dooku, like the Dooku novels when he's coming up. Dooku was chosen by Yoda, which is like the elite, choice, obviously there. But I don't remember the other masters that were possibilities for Palpatine.
Yeah,
because they're about the same age.
Ideas. Okay. Yeah, they are, right? Like, I have two ideas for like wild speculative episodes. And they're very much polar opposites. The first is, what if kind of like we did our affinities episode, which would be fun. Like, let's game out what would have happened if Luke actually did join Vader.
Okay.
Like, what would have a Vader Luke master apprentice relationship been like if Luke turned to the dark side and joined Vader? And then the opposite is, what if we did a mirror universe version of Star Wars where everyone was flipped? So basically, Dooku and Palps are light side. And then you get Yoda and like a couple of other dark side.
Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, or
yeah.
Wow.
Just put it out there. I know. I mean, let's not do it right now. because I need a week. I need weeks to think about this, but I think it'd be fascinating.
Yeah, that's interesting. That got to be in the right mood for the what ifs.
I mean, don't you think Luke and Vader would just immediately go to assail the Emperor and just take him out?
Yes, they would. But what happens after that? How
one of them is going to get
long?
injured in that fight. You don't take out Palpatine without.
Yeah. I mean, Luke's going to end up being like he's going to end up being a weird version of his dad, and then it's just like what ends up happening. Like Luke's just going to get. Basically, Luke's. We're doing it, guys.
Vader might perish in that fight.
Like, I think Luke ends up getting. So basically, I think Luke ends up getting the lightning to the point of being affected to it, robot, or to the point of like the Emperor, right? Like, hard and orange.
Yeah, like that.
But the question becomes, they still kill him, and then the question is, how long is it until Luke actually figures out how to like take control, right, and actually kill, and then does Leia become his apprentice? Right? Like, we can game this thing out quite a ways.
Right. And then how long till Leia destroys Luke?
Right.
Because she's actually stronger, I think, in many, many ways.
Yeah. So. I think this ends up with Leia being the Emperor.
The sort of
Empress. Yeah.
Emperor. It's Palpatine. And we didn't get, like, imagine if Palpatine had kids. I guess, I mean, now we know he did. He did.
He did.
Oh, he did. And a granddaughter.
But actually, there's probably many Srancast clones out there. But it's interesting because like Dune, you have. I hate to go back to Dune, but it feels like the Empire in Dune. Feels like
it all goes back to Dune.
It just feels like an extended family, like like that.
Mm-hmm.
That house is is its own house, and I feel like it's Palpatine's just by himself. And there's no air. Like it's It's a belief.
So the Harkonnens have more going on than just the Palpatines, right? And the Skywalkers have weirdly less going on than the Atreides.
Yeah, I think actually, I mean, if you go like the whole orphan model and the adoption model, which is saw a lot of in the sequels, I think Anakin is Sheev's adopted son.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like how it works. And then but then a Skywalker adopts a Palpatine, right? And that's the flip to it there. Like
I know
adopts a Skywalker, and then a Skywalker adopts a Palpatine, and it goes
Palpatine. I know there's a lot of critique about how small that makes the galaxy, and I accept that critique. But there's also some weird, beautiful symmetry poetry in the fact that a Skywalker adopts a Palpatine. Like I every time, like, I don't know if the execution was to the point where I love it, but every time I in my mind tell myself that narrative, I kind of get choked up a little bit, if that makes sense. Like there's kind of like a beautiful thing about that. Yeah
Indeed.
Right.
All right. I think we talked about
what are we doing? What happened?
This is a Darth Vader comic book arc. It is awesome.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. That was good. We will be back with you next week with a new episode, and we will decide what that is. I have a list of 6 different things, actually, that we might do next week. So,
oh, wow.
Well, why don't we talk about that off air instead of pitching something that may or may not happen?
Yeah.
And do our thing. But thanks very much for listening. Hope this enlightened you a bit on the comics, and it was exciting to think about new content coming up with the news. And we'll talk to you next week. May the Force be with you.
This is Grex Kondak signing off. For the latest breaking news, follow @CoreWorldNews on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you and good night.
Remember, the Force will be with you always.